we've had the Bitcoin ETFs, all of that hype already behind us, everything launched, all of the copium and hopium that we were going to 100K instantly and the price was going to rally and everything was going to be great. And none of it turned out being true. The price is tumbling ever since those events, and everyone's now flipped bearish, and it's the end of the world, and Bitcoin at $39,000 is just dead and gone, and it's not worth it anymore. It is funny to see these cycles continuously repeat themselves. With just a few months ago, 39K would have been championed on, and it would have been a great price. But now it's a terrible price, and it's the worst thing in the world. And who could have ever go through this ever again? So a couple of the things going on with the ETF stuff is they are doing a lot of trading. They're becoming pretty big ETFs, but Grayscale, one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin, because they were a trust before, they had 600,000 Bitcoin, and they have been dumping nonstop because people have been selling because they finally can. They were trapped in Grayscale for a long time, and now they can finally sell their Bitcoin or shares in Bitcoin. And one of those sellers is this right here. This is crazy. Is FTX. They sold 22 million shares worth of Grayscale's ETF now, and that was worth about $1 billion in Bitcoin. Since it was converted into the exchange traded fund and ETF earlier this month, taking FTX's great GBTC ownership down to 0. And this is a big event because obviously we know FTX is bankrupt. They have to get liquidated. They're liquidating all their assets, taking that stuff out. I don't think it would shock anyone that a lot of bankrupt entities actually own GBTC. They try to do that arbitrage trade. That's where a lot of this interest, interest paying stuff came from, like Celsius, BlockFi, Voyager. That's where they made some of the interest, from arbitraging the Bitcoin price and the GBTC premium at the time. Once that flipped into a discount, became a massive problem, and they could no longer get the arbitrage and would end up going bankrupt and collapsing some stuff. So maybe a bit more complex than that, but there is at least a portion of a lot of bankrupt companies that were in Grayscale. Now they are can finally sell, right? The discount is back to like very, very low discount, or about at NAV, and now they're all selling. So there's probably going to be a lot more pressure coming out of Grayscale, but eventually that'll end. Eventually it'll blow over, and I think that there's going to be prices where people are ready to buy a lot of Bitcoin that they see as valuable prices, probably like 36K, around that area. That's like one step down that people are saying there's a lot of interest in there. So we'll see what happens. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the short-term price shouldn't really matter, right? We're going to talk about it all the time because it's something to talk about. But when investing, looking at day-to-day price swings is not the best thing to do. But also, we might have a bailout coming because we've got Jim Cramer. He is talking about Bitcoin nonstop, and it's not positive, so that's a good thing. Maybe we get the inverse Cramer here. So we'll just scroll through some of his tweets here because they're here, like saying Bitcoin equals tough own. Unlikely that Bitcoin finds its footing. He's talks, has another big tweet here saying like, a nasty beginning to the Bitcoin sell-off. Someone's probably going to try to make a stand here. But as we said last night, you can't have an asset double in value by hundreds of billions of dollars in anticipation of an ETF, and then almost no one shows up, which is interesting for him to say because the ETFs are doing really good. Like if you look at their numbers, the flows are doing pretty good. I think it's like the second biggest ETF in the market now, or commodities ETF in the market at least, behind gold. I think they're competing with the S&P 500 ETFs, beating some of them. So to say no one showed up is to kind of be pretty ignorant of what's going on in Bitcoin, these ETFs. But that makes sense for Jim Cramer, right? And this is an absolutely fantastic thing. If Jim Cramer is saying how this is terrible and Bitcoin's done, the sell-off's here, it's dead, that is beautiful. We want him saying that because he is always wrong on everything he says. It's crazy how consistent he can be with that. But the haters of Bitcoin, they're showing up, right? Obviously, they're celebrating this move down, even though they were also calling for lower prices when Bitcoin was $16,000 a coin, saying it was going to 10,000, going to 3,000, going to 8,000. It was just going to continue collapsing. And they're celebrating a move to 39K. So to put that in perspective, right, they were calling for it to be worse at 16 and saying they're right at 39,000. So you could see how it's doesn't really math, right? So these guys obviously just hate Bitcoin and are kind of showing it here. But in the greater scheme of things, right, these ETFs, they're doing, I think they've done like almost $3 billion in trading volume for since they've started trading or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers. I have to look at it. But in the end of the day, say they did 3 billion, that's not that much in terms of like what Bitcoin does. If we look at Bitcoin here, this is the chart, obviously, that everyone's crying over. Even if we zoom out a little bit more, because it's the 49,000 down to 39K moves that Bitcoin has never done ever before in the history of Bitcoin. Never has Bitcoin moved down by $10,000 or 10% plus. Never ever has Bitcoin done that. This is the first time for Bitcoin to ever do this, right? Everyone's acting like that at least. But if we look at some of these numbers here, you could see that Bitcoin, at least today, it usually is around 20 to 30 billion dollars in volume. So these ETFs, even if they're doing $1 billion a day in volume, which I don't think they are, but say they are, they're still not doing anywhere near the vast majority of the market of Bitcoin. There's a massive market out here. And basically, what probably happened with this ETF stuff is buy the rumor, sell the news, right? And people were saying that wasn't going to happen, but looks like it ended up happening. And basically, because you just run out of buyers, right? People are excited about the ETF, so they're front running it. They're buying it up. Bitcoin runs up, and ETFs launch, and Bitcoin has a nice little run up too. A little bit more excitement from late people, FOMO, right? And then people start selling the news because there's no more hype here, and there's actually no more buyers. So it might not even be people selling the news, but no more people buying because they already loaded up, right? So they don't need to buy more. They bought up to this event, and now there's just no more buyers. So if more sellers come in because they're saying this is the news, time to sell it, then you don't have anyone to buy. The price goes down. So it's a saying for a reason, right? Buy the rumor, sell the news, because that's what happens a lot of the time. Ultimately, doesn't matter, but we're going to have this short-term period of the Bitcoin bears saying that they're right and this thing is worthless, even though they were calling for the same thing at 16,000. And we even got some of these ETFs on Twitter going at it, saying, we're not tourists, right? The price going down, saying it's fine. You know, I think ultimately is what people should be doing. Like, it is fine. Bitcoin has done these moves before. All markets have moves like this. It just had a year where it went up like 160% in a year. So a pullback and a correction is due. It's not the end of the world. People act like it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. They said this, and they also responded to someone because, you know, someone said to buy some Bitcoin and don't just let the customers do the buying. And they responded to that as well, saying that they put their money where their mouths are and put in $72.5 million into Bitcoin. So it's just kind of funny. The new age, right? Like, you would never get an S&P 500 index tweeting on, anyone who's running an S&P 500 index tweeting about it and tweeting about them putting money in the S&P and doing this and that. But these Bitcoin, at least one of them, and I'm sure we'll see more like Grayscale, they're more on social media. It's more of a social media meme kind of asset. It plays off those roles, and we'll probably see more of these guys just communicating and doing stuff like this. I don't think that it's crazy. It's not a bad thing. I think it's going to be interesting to see at some point these ETFs. There's going to be the winners and losers. Right now, it's basically BlackRock, Fidelity are the winners. I think there's a couple other two. I don't know who's behind them, but some of these guys are doing pretty good. At some point, there's not going to be many. These 11 ETFs, there's probably going to be 4 that are actually doing all of the volume, and those are going to end up being the winners. And Fidelity and BlackRock seem to have locked themselves into 1 and 2, so we'll see who gets the last 2 spots there. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is fine. The price is going to move up and down day to day. Who cares? You should be looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future, not a couple days in the future, right? And these moves happen. It's not something that Bitcoin's never done. It's not going to be the last time Bitcoin does something like this. So we'll see at higher prices when Peter Schiff and Jim Cramer and these guys, we'll see another correction come down, and they'll say that they were right yet again, and the price will be 3x what it is today, and they'll say that they were right. That's going to do it for this video. As always, don't forget to smash that button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.